Hi guys, we are now working on chapter 6, the 6th lesson, and this is about trapezoids and kites, and we're learning to apply the properties of trapezoids and kites. You look at your notes here, properties of trapezoids. Trapezoids have one set of parallel lines. So one set of parallel lines, that's going to show you that it's a trapezoid. Now there's a separate type of trapezoid that's called an isosceles trapezoid. An isosceles trapezoid, just like an isosceles triangle, has congruent base angles, except in a trapezoid we have this angle and this angle that are congruent, and then this angle and this angle are congruent. It also has these two segments congruent. So now we can say the opposite. If we have one pair of congruent base angles, then it's an isosceles trapezoid as well. So just one pair of one pair of congruent angles and the congruent sides, then it's an isosceles triangle. The other part of the isosceles trapezoid is that if it is isosceles if and only if its diagonals are congruent. So this diagonal is congruent to this diagonal. Then we move on to the mid-segment of a trapezoid. The mid-segment is this one here. It's called a mid-segment because it's in the middle. It cuts this segment in two equal parts and this segment into two congruent parts. And then there's a theorem that goes with it, the trapezoid mid-segment theorem, that says the length of this mid-segment is equal to this one plus this one divided by 2. So that's what this right here says. Now we look at kites, and a kite is just what it implies. You know, it's a kite. A kite has no parallel lines and exactly two pairs of consecutive congruent sides. Consecutive congruent. So that means the two that are next to each other are congruent. The two that are next to each other are congruent. But there are some cool theorems that go with kites. If a quadrilateral is a kite, then its diagonals are perpendicular. So that means that we're going to do a lot of things with 90 degrees and triangles and stuff, because you can see it cuts the kite into 4 triangles. And also, a kite has exactly one pair of opposite sides that are congruent, opposite angles rather, that are congruent. This is congruent to this one. So, we move on. All right, so now we do algebra with all of those theorems. Well, I have to figure out what x is. And I'm noticing that this is perpendicular to this, so it's a trapezoid. I also notice that if we have these parallel lines, I've got a transversal here. And I'm looking at this angle here and this angle here, which would mean that those are same side interior angles, which means that they add up to 180. Except there's no number here. That's the angle 1. That's this. But I know that I can figure it out because I know that this, I'm going to mark it in a different color now, this angle is congruent to this angle. Oh, okay. Well, that means that the measure of angle 1 right here is going to be 117. Well, now I can take that theorem of adding those two angles together to equal 180 because I know exactly what that is. It's 117. So I'm going to take the algebra from the angle L and say 2x minus 7 plus 117 equals 180. All right. So let's see, that's 2x. And 117 minus 7 is going to be 110 equals 180 minus 110 minus 110. And we end up with 70 equals 2x. So then x equals 35. Okay. Well, let's see what goes on here. Okay, so x, we said, is 35. Well, can you tell me what the measure of angle 2 is? The measure of angle 2 is right here. Well, I know that I've got x, and I've got 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this x, and plug it back in here, and set that equal to the measure of angle 2. Okay, so that is 2x minus 7 equals the measure of angle 2. All right. So I'm going to plug in the 35, so that's 70 minus 7 equals the measure of angle 2. So 70 minus 7 is 63 equals the measure of angle 2. So the measure of angle 2 is 63 degrees. Okay, using the theorem about isosceles trapezoids, I want you to figure this one out on your own. I will know that you listened to this video because this problem will be done. So let's move on to number 3. Okay, so now we're looking at midsegments. Remember, the midsegment theorem says that this segment and this segment divided by 2 equals the midsegment. Well, that means I'm going to write 35 plus x all over 2 equals 45. All right? So multiply both sides by 2. Okay, so we get 70 plus x equals 90, x equals 20. Well, that certainly wasn't drawn to scale. What did I do wrong here? I know what I did. I figured it out. This should be 70 because this divided out equals 1, so this should be 35. So then x should be 55, whoops, which makes a whole lot more sense because I was going to show you that this is 55. Well, the difference between these two is 10. So the difference between these two has got to be 10. And so then your x is, of course, 55. I'm sorry. But we got to fix. Next one. Okay, they want us to figure out what x is. Well, I see this 15 here as the midsegment because this is in the picture. So that means that if I add this term and this term and divide it all by 2, I should get 15. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 8x plus 5 plus 6x minus 3 divided divided by 2 and set it equal to 15. Well, that looks crazy, doesn't it? But it's not. We can do this. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And I'm not going to make that same mistake this time. So I get 8x plus 5 plus 6x minus 3 equals 30. All right. So now I'm going to combine like terms. I'm going to combine the 8x and the 16x, 14x plus 5 minus 3 is 2 equals 30. All right. So now take away 2 from both sides. 14x equals 28. Divide by 14, x equals 2. So x equals 2. Okay, now remember I told you the kites, we're going to be doing a lot of things with triangles. This is one of those really complicated ones with all these little triangles, so we're going to redraw some triangles once we get going here. The first one we're going to look for, though, is the measure of angle 1. Well, if you go back to the kites, where's that? Remember, the diagonals are perpendicular. So let's go back down to that one. Okay, the diagonals are perpendicular. That means angle 1 is perpendicular. It's 90. It also means that this one and this one and this one are 90. So now we're going to use those properties of triangles that we learned in order to figure out some of these angles. Okay, so we look at this triangle up here with the 46 in it. And we say, okay, how are we going to figure out what angle 2 is? But by using that, well, if you look carefully at this triangle, these two triangles, they are congruent by hypotenuse leg. So if they're congruent by hypotenuse leg, number 2 is going to be congruent to 46. Okay, so now we have this triangle right here that we're going to be dealing with so that we can figure out angle 3 right here. Okay, so we've got this triangle. I'm going to redraw it. I've got 90 here. I've got 46 here. So how do you figure this one out? We're going to add those 3 angles to 180. Just like we have been doing over and over again. So 90 plus 46 plus x equals 180. 136 plus x equals 180. Then we end up taking 136 away, and we get x equals 44. So that's the measure of angle 3. That's angle 3 right here. So 44 is our answer for the measure of angle 3. Next, make sure you take note of this little doohickey right here that says triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Those triangles are congruent by side, side, side because we have the reflexive property right here. So if they are congruent by side, 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 we can figure out x. Because if they are congruent, then this angle is congruent to this angle, which means we set them equal. So I'm going to take this algebra and equal it to this algebra. So 3x plus 5 equals 4x minus 30. All right, so I'm going to take 3x away from both sides. And I end up with 5 equals x minus 30 plus 30 plus 30. 35 equals x. So now we have to figure out what y is. Well, I know what x is, so I'm going to know I have to plug it back in to one of these terms. And then I can equal all the angles, all three angles, to 180. Because this angle right here is congruent to this angle right here. Let me do that in green. This angle right here is congruent to this angle right here. And this one is congruent to this one. Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. This angle right here is congruent. Yes, to this angle. I got it. Okay. So then we're going to add them all up to 180. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to take 3x plus 5 plus y plus 2y minus 20 equals 180. Okay, well, we got the x, but we know that we can plug this one in. So we're going to rewrite it as 3 times 35 plus 5 plus y plus 2y minus 20 equals 180. All right, so 70 and 35 is 105 plus 5 plus y plus 2y minus 20 equals 180. Okay, so now let's combine like terms. Let's do the y's first. So 3y plus 105 plus 5 is 110 minus 20 is 90 equals 180. All right, then 3y equals 90. Y equals 30. Last one. Okay. So we have to look at the picture, and I noticed that there's a little 8 here. I noticed that there's a 12 here. And, oh, there's something else. There's this right here. Okay, so TR is 18. TR, this whole thing, is 18. Okay, that helps, I think. Okay, so now they're asking us for SW. SW is this long segment here. Well, remember, in a kite, this 8 is going to be congruent to this 8 over here. So the whole length of it is going to be 16. Now for TR, the blue one, this segment on top and this segment are not the same. So we have to look at another part of the picture, which would be this green 12. So in order to figure out what the top of this segment is, this part right here, we have to take the 18 and subtract 12. 18 minus 12 equals 6. So this little segment right here is going to be 6. All right, so get ready to do some work tomorrow and have a great night.